Okay, we're all set.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Temple Beth Shalom. We would rather be in person, even though Cantor Siegel looks like she's in the sanctuary, but she's not. We welcome you to Shabbat services led by Rabbi Leuben and Cantor Siegel. Ideally, we would love to be together, and hopefully we will be very soon. I want to welcome you all on behalf of our president, Stephen Pardo, our senior rabbi, Gail Pomerantz, and everyone at Temple Beth Shalom. We hope you have a wonderful beginning to 2022. And we only hope for better things this coming year and good health for everyone. So it's my pleasure to welcome you and wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and happy almost 2022. We are so thrilled that you could join us this evening as we celebrate Shabbat together and bring in the secular New Year together as well. Thank you. I am Rabbi Joanne Leuben, and I'm joined by Cantor Lisa Siegel, and we will be praying this evening as a community, separated but together, of course. I was asked a few weeks ago by a friend how to say New Year's resolutions in Hebrew. And I thought for a minute and I couldn't think of an idiom that I had ever heard. So we could directly translate each of the words, but I really wanted to understand what it meant in context. So I asked one of my Israeli friends if there was a word for it. And my Israeli friend jokingly said, Kol Nidre. And I thought about this for a minute and of course, the Jewish New Year begins with, the Jewish Yom Kippur, of course, like the beginning of the new year, is when we celebrate Yom Kippur, we say Kol Nidre. And that's really the opposite of New Year's resolutions. That's the time when we actually release ourselves from any vows and any promises that we may have made that we didn't actually get to see to fruition. And as so many people know, there's a joke about New Year's resolutions where we realize that we say them and we try to think about how long they're actually going to last. Are you going to make it till the second week of January, maybe the third week of January? But I doubt if many New Year's resolutions make it past the first month, which is why it's so beautiful that the Jewish tradition, instead of making false promises for the year to come, actually looks back on the year that we are ending. And instead of deciding what we're going to do out of nothing, we think about all the things we learned and all the goodness and all of the lessons that we want to take with us into the year. So as we think about and ponder all of the things that we've learned and the experiences that we've had over the year, both good and bad. Hopefully all of them provide for us important life lessons. We bring in the Shabbat this evening as we bless Shabbat with as we light the candles of Shabbat, we bring in the light of Shabbat. I just lost a candle there.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. And now we raise our cups symbolically or with me to bring in the sweetness of Shabbat as we sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho ve'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shamat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim. And as we have now brought in the lights and the sweetness for Shabbat, we hope that all of our Shabbat will be sustained by this candle and this wine. And we now continue to welcome Shabbat with Kabbalat Shabbat. And I will say the words of L'chuna Ranana in English to begin our welcoming of the Sabbath this evening. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hands are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land, God with which God's hand fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai our Maker, for Adonai is our God, and we are the people God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge on this day.
Chadodi. We welcome that bride amongst us in our midst to bring in Shabbat. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Once more. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'ni borachad, Hishmiyanu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, Ushmo echad, L'Shem u'tiferet v'litchila. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Likrat Shabbat, Lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekor habracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Hitoreri, kiva orech, kumi ori, shir daveri kevod Adonai, alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Boi v'shalom, Ateret bala, gam b'simcha, U'bzola toch emuneh, Am segula, Boi chala, Boi chala. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Lecha Dodi, Librad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. We are going to continue with our Ma'ariv service with our call to worship, the Baruch Hu. Ya la la, la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai,
take a deep breath as we prepare ourselves to call out the words of Shema and pray together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Ba'ed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
As we begin to say the Michamocha, to pray the Michamocha together as a community, we think about where the Israelites were at just before they were going to cross the sea. And while they were free, they grew up only knowing bondage, only knowing slavery. And just the amount of courage that it must have taken after a life of living the way that they each lived to be able to take those steps forward towards redemption is inspiring. And may all of us continue to remember them in that way. And as we pray together Michamocha, let us think about that bravery, and hopefully it can inspire us to take those steps into the sea toward freedom.
Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? Yalla la la, yalla la 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 la la,
continue with the Hashkivenu prayer as we pray for the shelter of health, especially going into this new year, not only on the Shabbat, but in this new year, we pray that we will all be sheltered with peace and health.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, ve'amidenu shamreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, ve'amidenu shamreinu l'chaim. Ushmor
Now rise spiritually or physically for the Amidah, our central prayer.
Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Go Melech Hasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atarav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach umorid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidom elach, Melech memid umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'nemanat al hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukadoshim b'chol yom yehallelu Selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We pray the remainder of the Amidah with our own thoughts and prayers. promise based on this week's Parshat Vayera, based upon God's four promises of redemption to Moses and the Israelites. This is the promise that I have made to you, and you will go forth into freedom. You will be my people, and I will be your God. This is the promise I will keep with you. Vehi samti et kemei avodatam, v'ga'alti et kem bizroan betuyam, v'natati ota lachem morosha, va'ezkor et briti. This is the promise that I have made to you, and you will go forth into freedom. You will be my people, and I will be your God. This is the promise I will keep with you. And you will go into the land of Abraham and Sarah. I have lifted up my hand and opened up the way, that you may live in freedom to the end of time. This is the promise I have made to you. This is the promise that I have made to you, and you will go forth into freedom. You will be my people, and I will be your God. This is the promise I will keep with you.
Shabbat Shalom. I can almost hear you saying it back. I'm going to say it one more time. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Awesome. I can see it. A few weeks ago, days before this spike in Omicron, I took the ninth graders on the first teen trip since COVID to New York City. That Friday night, we couldn't miss Central Synagogue for Shabbat services. Little did we know just how lucky we would be to participate in that service, because that evening, Rabbi Israel Dresner was honored with the Aliyah to the Torah as a part of his bucket list as his final days approach. Rabbi Dresner was one of the great rabbis during the civil rights movement and a friend to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As a child of Holocaust survivors, Rabbi Dresner knew just how precious life is and the horrifying results that come from racism. He dedicated his life and his rabbinate to Tikkun Olam, working to help create a world redeemed by all means necessary. He taught in a recent interview with CBS New York, every person has an obligation to try to make a contribution to making the world a little better place. As one of the Freedom Riders, Rabbi Dresner earned the title, the most arrested rabbi. During his time in the Tallahassee jail, after the first interfaith clergy freedom ride in 1961, Dr. King wrote him a letter, which included this powerful statement: "Our spiritual limitations are shown by your physical incarceration." This chilling sentence has kept me thinking about the concept of freedom since meeting this hero who fought for the rights of all peoples, believing that spiritual freedom for all could and should be attained. This week's Parsha, Va'era, is the second in the Parsha in the story of the Exodus. It is during this Parsha that we really begin to emphasize the word freedom. As Cantor just mentioned, the word freedom and the concept of redemption is promised 4 times. The Israelites have been slaves in Egypt for 400 years. That means when Moses comes with God's message, this generation doesn't know a life other than that in bondage. And neither did their parents, grandparents, and even their great-grandparents. They were slaves physically and spiritually for generations. And it's not shocking that when God says in Exodus 6:6, I am the Lord, I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. They don't immediately jump for joy. Just a few lines later, the Torah tells us, when Moses told this to the Israelites, they would not listen to Moses, their spirits crushed by cruel bondage. Heartbreaking. Of course, their spirits were crushed. And that's why some scholars say that the plagues that follow this line in the Torah were not only to show Pharaoh and the Egyptians God's power, but to show the Israelites. And it would take nothing short of a miracle to save their souls. And luckily for them, God began performing miracles. It did not just take one act of God, though, and not even the 7 out of 10 plagues included in this parsha worked. Rabbi Anna Bonaheim writes a Devar Torah that includes in it, it takes a generation of slaves, 10 plagues, to believe that redemption is truly possible. The Israelites, maybe even more than Pharaoh and the Egyptians, desperately needed proof of God's power and might. The plagues unite them, not only as an oppressed people accustomed to life's cruelty, but also as a people on the verge of liberation. These first 10 plagues are those first glimmers of hope. And that is the only glimmer, but at least it can lead to the next. As the Israelites continue on their journey, physically and spiritually, from slavery to redemption. But freedom doesn't come in all at once. It comes in stages. It's a process. This is shown throughout the rest of the Torah, as it takes 4 more books for us to make it to the promised land. This is also told throughout history and experience. Rabbi Dresner speaks of his admiration of Dr. King's hope when he said during the same CBS New York interview, I've always been very optimistic. I try to follow Dr. King's course. He always felt that we were making progress and we have to continue to make progress. It's this progress that allows us to see the next glimmer of hope, whether it's in the fight for freedom and equality for our country and all of its citizens, or the global pandemic in which we find ourselves, or any other form of spiritual incarceration we are experiencing. In a moment where too many are confined by COVID during the third wave of the pandemic, whether it's in quarantine with COVID or isolating in hopes of not being next, we may find our spirits a little crushed. We also find ourselves at the brink of a new secular year with hope on the horizon. The story of the Exodus teaches us that there is no quick fix to a crushed spirit. Let us be patient with others, patience, savlanut, as we can't always see their process. And let us be patient with ourselves and have savlanut as we heal and grow from our experiences. And over this past year, we have witnessed many miracles. We can't forget about those. We have learned a great deal. We have made progress. We have come together as a community. We have survived another year of navigating the unknown. As we ring in 2022, let us honor Rabbi Dresner and embody his eternal optimism for a brighter future, one filled with freedom for all. Shabbat Shalom and Happy New Year. And at this moment, we take time to pray for those in our communities who have perhaps crushed spirits or who are themselves in need of healing of any type, body, mind, or spirit. If you are thinking of someone who could use our prayers for healing, or if you yourself could, please feel free to say their names out loud, or if you're following via Facebook, write into the Facebook chat. And you can feel free, if you're here on Zoom with us this evening, to unmute yourself at this moment.
Susan Folstein, Kathy Hurwitz, Donna Blaustein, Fran Levy, and anyone else who might be getting a positive COVID test.
Wish and pray for them and hope for everyone in our community in the world, a refuah shlema, anyone in need of healing, and especially those suffering with COVID right now. Continue with the Aleinu prayer. Please rise if you are able.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo samechel keinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umotim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
This point in our service, we turn our hearts and our minds to those who are no longer with us. We remember those who have passed in the past 30 days: Olga Ruiz, Sandy Powers, Hal Etkin, Rabbi Mark Blumenthal, Ronald Krongold, and the victims of gun violence in America this week: Valentina Oriana Peralta, Alicia Cardenas, Danny Schofield, and Sarah Steck. We also remember all of those in our community who have died and whose families have lovingly inscribed their names in our alcove of remembrance. We remember Charles Abbott, Minnie Abrams, Sophie Anson, Bertolyn Barak, Herman G. Barron, Gertrude Burrick, Mordecai Broad, Kate G. Brown, Jean Bryn, Ray Chesler, Donald Erlinger, Leroy D. Feinberg, Samuel Fine, Ben E. Friedman, Harriet Shirley Glickstein, Samuel Sidney Goldberg, Arnold Haber, Arthur R. Hill, Sylvia Erna Kalish, Stanford E. Kane, Aladar Kellerman, Louis J. Krensky, Alfred Kronthal, Samuel D. May, Sandra Miriam Mordakovich, Sydney Nolman, Doris Oleski, Evelyn Postelnek, Ruth K. Rosenblum, William Stanton Rubin, Ellen Rochelle Rudd, Arnold Shevlin, Dorothy Rose Simon, Mary Sparrow, Jacob Steiner, Irving L. Wexler, Jack W. Young. And we also remember all of those in our community who have died at this time in years past, as you remember their yard sites this evening. Max Alperstein, Ronald Asher, Sylvia Barron, Mario Ruben Blinder, William Brandon, Diana Dorothy Paris Breslov, Jay Carr, Maurice Cornelissen, Kenneth Epstein, Selma Grabois Frost, Maurice Glazer, Herman Goldbaum, Sanford Sandy Goodman, Emmanuel Greenwald, Dr. Francis Haas, Samuel Hirsch, David Jacobson, Grant Jacobson, Jerry Klein, Clara Jean Cooper Klein, Howard Nobloch, Alexander Ziskind Lev, Carlos Lilo Lindenfeld, Robert C. Magoon, Olga Meister, Ruth Mishan DeDauer, Raymond Penny, Harold Rogenson, Nicole Lisa Sions, Sue Rose Samuels, Daphne Selig, Ida Sherman, Louis Silberman, Sherman Simon, Celia Simon, Bet Amdor Snetman, Alan Sway, Louis Taber, Frida Walkowski. And as always, we remember all of those who died so that we could live freely here in America, all of those who died fighting so that we can have a homeland in Israel, and the more than 6 million men, women, and children who were murdered in the Shoah. If you are in a period of mourning of Shloshim, a month, Shana, a year, or Shiva, 1 week, please feel free to unmute yourself or add their names in the chat in whichever way you would like. Or if you are joining us from home watching, feel free to say their name out loud or in your hearts so that we can pray together with you as one community. We hold all of their names in our hearts for a blessing as we pray together Mourner's Kaddish. Please rise if you are able. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirteh ve'almlich malchuteh, v'chayachon u'vyomachon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'gala u'vizman karib ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivorach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach ve'ishtabach ve'pa'ar ve'romam ve'naseh. Yitadar ve'taleh ve'talal. Shemei d'kudashah b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Damiran ve'ama ve'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Zichronam lebracha. May their memories always be for us a blessing. And there are just a few announcements on this Shabbat, New Year's Eve. We are still virtual tomorrow morning, so you can join us for a Torah study at 9:30 and Minyan via Zoom or any of the watch pages at 10:30. And we thank you all for joining us this evening, and we hope that this new secular year that is upon us is filled with only health first, and happiness, of course, as we wish all of you a Shabbat Shalom.
And we're going to close with a special rendition of Oseh Shalom. It's brand new, hot off the press. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Happy secular new year to everybody. A good year, a better year, a healthy year.